Good afternoon, and welcome to the Journyx webinar on new features in Journyx Mobile version 10.1. My name is Meredith Zachritz. I'm the Director of Product Management here at Journyx, and I will be running today's presentation and demo. Our agenda today is real straightforward. We're going to go through some demonstrations of some of the new features, and we'll talk about all of the new features in our new mobile app due out in March of 2017. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the requirements for being able to run the new version, and then we'll break for questions and answers so that you guys can let me know if there's anything that wasn't clear or anything else that you might like to see and talk about. We'll do the question and answer session through the GoTo panel, so you can submit your questions at any time during the presentation, and then we will get to those at the end. Version 10.1 of the mobile app has a variety of new features. First and foremost, we retooled our entry screen interface, and we'll go through a little bit of that and what has changed there. We also now have support for allocation time entry. And so if you are one of those people or you have employees who use entry screens where they enter their in and out times and then allocate their hours to projects based on those in and out times, you can now do this end to end in the mobile app. Another key component or new feature in this new mobile app is data validation support. We had partial data validation support in earlier releases. We now have full support. So if you have rules that help your users to ensure that they enter their time correctly and will block them from saving bad entries, these rules will be enforced in the mobile app now too, so they can freely go back and forth between browser and mobile entry. This also includes some of the audit level support for those of you who may use audit levels 3 or 5. This is something you may be familiar with, DCEA compliance and that sort of thing. Likewise are fully supported in this version of mobile. Other new features, prior to this release, you could not do the more extended entry notes in mobile, and notes are now supported in mobile. Likewise, while we had support for project dependencies, there is a feature for column-to-column dependencies as well in the Journyx system, and that is now supported in mobile app. And then finally, there we have an improved sync of data. If you ever worked with the previous app, there was a lot of data that was synced over, and it could be quite time consuming, especially if you had access to a long project list. And so we've done a lot of retooling of that data sync to make it much faster. So the performance of the app is improved. So just to give you an idea before we jump directly into the demo of the mobile app, here are some screens of the new version. In the middle, you'll see kind of the new entry screen format. You'll see a summary of the different sheets that you have available and the status, whether they're open or submitted and what you still need to submit. And then you'll see the basics of the time entry screen. On the left-hand side, we have an example of allocation entry. And so again, these are for the people who have the type of screen that requires them to enter in and out times in addition to the hours against their projects. And that example shows a little bit of how they track to be sure that their hours match up with their total work time. And then on the right-hand side, example of some data validation as conducted in the mobile app. And of course, this is something that you see in the browser, and it will now be something that you will see in the mobile app should you break any rules while entering your time. So let's go ahead and jump over to our mobile demonstration. If you'll give me just a moment to pull it up. There we go. So we're looking at a main menu that includes pretty much every option that you could have in the mobile app. The average user of the mobile app is not going to see all of these options, but in this case, I am a manager who I can enter time, expenses, and some other tracking, custom as we call it. And I also have approvals for my team. So I've got every option available here on this menu. As I said, your average user might just have time or time and expense, or perhaps would just have approvals. It just depends on what you have given them access to in the system. So we're going to start by taking a look at the new interface. And this used to take you to a timesheet. And what we've done is added a layer that helps you to see, for example, oh, I didn't submit my timesheet for last week. Maybe before I jump into this week and start tracking my time, I should go ahead and do that. And so you can see here on the summary that I've got a list of my sheets, what's been submitted, what hasn't been submitted. And so I now have the ability to see my highest priority and go there and do that. I'm going to go ahead and jump into this week's timesheet, which is blank right now, just so that you can take a look at the new interface on a brand new blank timesheet. Now, because we're also looking at the new feature for allocation entry, this particular interface has one component that's a little different from somebody who just has a basic hours only, grid type of time entry. And those are those zeros you see there in green down the middle. Those are my allocation balances. And so if I put in time, let's say 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., then I have 4 hours that I need to allocate. And those zeros, and we'll take a look at these in just a minute, are telling me right now that I don't have a balance to allocate, but as I put in my times, it will give me a balance to allocate, and I can keep track of how many hours I need to enter. So those green zeros down the middle are specific to the allocation entry interface. And we'll take a look. I'm going to click on the new button up in the right-hand corner. This is a new feature here that might be helpful for those of your users who occasionally get behind on their time entry and come in on a Friday and would like to enter their time, as you can see here. And what this does is it essentially says, okay, I need to get a week's worth of time put in. I've worked the same thing perhaps for the whole week or for a half day, the whole week. I can pick from some pre-populated entries here from my new entry. So I could just go ahead and put 8 hours and then go and pick my project and so on and so forth for 8 hours all week, or I could do something less. I can also skip it. If I'm not behind and I just want to put in something for a day or two, I can skip this. So in this case, I'm going to say no pre-populated hours. And we get to our new interface for new entries. Up at the top, we've had support for your memorized entries, and this makes it quick and easy so that you don't have to go and select individually like this for each area. So you can use your memorized entries, or you can select as you go. And then the nice thing about this new interface that was not true in previous versions is once you made your selections here, when you clicked on the amount for any one of the days that you wanted to enter time, you were taken to a separate screen. So you had to basically do this in 2 steps, and that is no longer the case. You can select time here and just keep going cell to cell. You'll jump down each cell and simply enter time all on one screen and save it. So that's one of the biggest changes in the interface, although there are all kinds of new options as well associated with it. So then we just save our time. And as I mentioned with the allocation entries, we can now see that we have 30 minutes on each day where we do not have associated in and out times. So it helps me to keep track of my timesheet, make sure that I have everything entered properly. So let's go and look at, I've got an allocation screen here that's a little bit more complete. So as you can see, by looking in the green zeros, I've got all of my times allocated properly. If you look just to the right, you can see my totals for each day. You can see that I've got time entered Monday through Thursday, 8 hours for each day, but Friday is still open. I'm going to go ahead and look at Monday for just a second. So on an allocation screen, one thing that's a little different from the average grid hours entry is that you have this little blue area where you can see your allocation balance for any given day. And I've got my entries below it. So those are my hours for the day that I've worked. And if I want to go and see or change or do anything with my allocated times, my in and out times, I simply click on that blue area above my entries, and I can manipulate my in and out times. So this is new. Now, if you happen to be assigned to an allocation screen where you are not allowed to enter your times manually, so let's say you have to actually click a clock to clock yourself in and out, then you will not see this screen. This is strictly for the manual entry. In the event that you are assigned to one of the screens that requires clock in, clock out, then you can use the punch functionality in the mobile app. But this is the screen where you would enter your in and out times. I'm going to go ahead and go back to our day screen so that your hours and your time worked for the day match up. So that's an overview of what the new allocation functionality looks like. Another thing that I mentioned in our new features is support now for all of our various data validation. And so I'm going to show you a couple of basic cases here. And allocation screens are a great example because you can't submit your timesheet if your allocation balances don't match the hours that you've allocated. So let's go ahead and let's click on Friday. I don't want to populate anything, and I'm going to log some time for Friday. Actually, let's go back and let's do an existing entry. So let's go to one of our existing entries here. I'm clicking on the entry with 7 hours there for Monday, and I'm going to add some time for Friday here. So I've got the whole row for the week. I'm going to click on Friday. Let's say I either make a mistake or I haven't finished entering all my time for the day, but I'm going to say I worked 4 hours on this for Friday. So I return to my timesheet, and I can see that Friday isn't fully allocated. I didn't do any in-out times right. I put in 4 hours, but I don't have any in-out times indicating what time I worked for those days. But let's say that I ignore this and I go ahead and submit my sheet, even though it's hard to ignore with that big red warning. So it's going to tell me I couldn't submit your sheet. It explains, what the problem is and how to fix it. So now I can go back to Friday, and I can see that my allocated balance is in red. So I'm going to click on that blue section, and I can put in some time. Let's get this way. So I'm going to say I worked 8 a.m. And, whoops, didn't mean to hit save there. Let's 12 p.m. Oop, hang on just a second. There we go. There we go. So now my allocation balance shows as green, and I should be good to submit, at least based on my allocation time. So we're going to save that. And now the message is cleared, everything looks green, everything looks really good. So I have 36 hours. I'm going to go ahead and try to submit this again. And it's failed. Let's see why. There we go. So it says it was rejected, and it's because I have to enter at least 40 hours in a week. So again, this is a custom rule that I set up for my end users that says everybody has to enter at least 40 hours in a week. And you can have any number of rules set up to enforce any number of conditions, but this is an example of a common one. So again, I'm not allowed to submit my timesheet. No approvers had to look at this and shoot it back to me at this point, which is great. So I'm going to go and fix this one more time. So we're going to up those hours. Like I said, in this case, I probably knew I didn't work 4 hours, or maybe I just didn't complete my timesheet all the way. And fix those allocation times again. There we go. Now let's see what happens. So all this time, it's still just, I'm being told exactly what to do to correct this so that I can get my timesheet submitted. And now we have succeeded. So with enforcement of the data validation, the end users are able to see exactly what's going on, just like they can in the browser, and then correct things. Similar to the data validation, there is also now support for higher audit levels, and we're not going to demonstrate this feature today, but in essence, when you are required to put in a reason for changing a record, for example, on a submitted and rejected sheet, so certain audit levels require you to enter a reason anytime you change an amount. Mobile will now enforce that, and you can enter the reason from the mobile app. So that's an additional new feature. Another new feature, and we'll just take a look at it quickly in a new sheet, as I mentioned, is the ability to enter notes. One of the things that you may have noticed off to the right of your totals for the day are a couple of zeros in parentheses. And what those are the counts for notes and attachments. Now, attachments are not new to this version, but the notes are. So we can go into our Monday entry, for example. And as you can see, you have the ability to enter both notes and attachments. So if I click on notes, I can now enter that extended note that we are used to seeing in the browser. And my count will be updated, and now I can see that I have notes. These notes are also available in expense entry. And so I'll just jump to expense entry quickly just to show you. So much in the same way that you see them in time, you have the ability to include notes in expense entry. And then, of course, those carry over to approvals as well, where approvers can see counts for notes and for attachments, and they're able to view them. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I'm going to leave, for the time being, I'm going to leave the demo up, and then I'll close out with some of the requirements and the release dates. So let's go ahead and talk questions while we have the demo up for display. So I have a question. Is there a way to force time in quarter-hour increments in tenths rather than minutes? There are several different options there. The data validation tool in the Journyx system, in the enterprise system, does allow you to enforce increments. And then mobile also has an option to require things to be done in quarter hours or in 5-minute, 10-minute, etc. increments. So yes, you can enforce the increments that people use to enter their time. All right. Somebody asked, does the mobile app enforce project assignments or allow for showing only assigned projects? And the answer is yes. It works in the same way that your browser does when you log into your own timesheet. You are only allowed to see the projects that you have access to. Dependencies and the ability to bill or access particular pay codes and so forth is all enforced in the same way that it is in your browser-based timesheet. So yes, you only see your assigned projects. Somebody's asking, can we see a time entry that is not an allocation type entry? The answer is yes. You will have to bear with me while I install. I'm going to reinstall the app and log in as somebody else. Let's go through the rest of our questions, and then I'll do that. It won't take long. Let's see. So somebody asked, can we only enter time up to the amount that's assigned? There is no enforcement of entering time only up to the amount that's assigned. That's not true of the mobile app. That's true of the Journyx system in general. If that's something that you're looking for, that is something that we can help you with through professional services. Can we see an expense entry with receipt upload? Sure. Like I said, this isn't new to this version, but that's not a problem, and I'll just do that really quickly here. I don't think I have any shortcut memorized entries in this case, but that's all right. So I'm just going through selecting my various codes here. Let's go ahead and do it. US. All right, so we'll say that we've got an expense for Monday, and we'll make it $250, or we could add some cents here. And then I clicked on, again, next to it with the zeros, and I have the option to add attachments and notes. So let's go to attachments. So I'm going to pull it from my gallery, but I could also take a photo of something right now to add as an attachment. And you may get pictures of my puppy. We'll see what we get. There we go. Okay, let's do this. I've got a choice of how large to make it, and that's really just about uploading it. So if it's 6 megs, you don't want to do that. And it is actually a picture of an error message, so it looks kind of funny, but that's what it is. All right, and there we have, so the amount of my expense. We have the one showing for my attachment, and then I click on save. And then I can go back and view it. I'm going to click on this again on Monday. Yeah, again, you see the one next to the attachments. If I click on attachments, we can go back and see this pretty screenshot. So that is how you add an expense with the receipt image. So somebody's asking about the previous app would load everything, talking about projects, and that it had difficulty managing all of that. This application, I mentioned that we reworked this for performance. It is just really hugely different. We had, tests where we had over 10,000 projects, and the old application would take 15 to 20 minutes to load. Load times on this new version are under a minute when we're talking about that kind of data. So if you happen to give your users access to tens of thousands of projects, this is not going to be a problem. With our new framework, it can handle it just fine, and they won't notice the performance issues that we had with the current application. All right. So I think the last question, does anybody have any other questions? If not, I'm going to go ahead and show just a basic timesheet without the allocation entry. Okay. So you can watch me uninstall the app and see how messy my phone is. And then we'll go ahead and log in as a user with just the basic grid time entry that probably a lot of your folks use. Looks like test flight might be a little slow. So you'll get to see a live sync. I already had everything loaded here, but as you will see, it's pretty quick. So we're back in. So this is the login screen. If you've never seen the mobile app before, this is what you will do the first time you need to log in. And this time we're going to log in as a user who has the basic grid time entry screen. So this is the new data sync, and this is where you could have once upon a time watched for a few or several minutes, and now as you can see, it's, in this case it was less than 10 seconds. So let's go to time, and we'll start with a blank time entry screen. So this is what the new time entry screen looks like without allocation entry. So there are no green zeros helping you out with your allocation times because you don't have to do the allocation times. Why don't we go ahead and create something that gives us populated rows right there. So what that does is it just gives me 8 hours for the whole week. And I'm going to use one of my memorized entries and say, you know what, I worked on this all week. And that's really all I have to do at that point to create my timesheet for the week. So handy little tools there to make it quick. But then I can click back through to the day and see my time entry. And again, the day view, on allocation had that little blue area where you could do your in-out times. But if you don't have an allocation screen, then this is what your basic day view looks like. And you can click on the amount and change it if you need to. So let's say I picked 8 hours for every day, but really I only worked 7.5 that day because I had a staff meeting and I want to change Monday. I can do that. And so that's what the basic time entry screen looks like without allocation. All right. So I have a few more questions up. Somebody's asking when the update will be available, and it will be available in mid-March, and I'm going to switch back to my slides in just a second, just give you a little bit more information on that update. And let's see, one other question. So somebody said in the non-mobile version, you can only load 7 receipts per time period for expenses. Can you load more now? That is not there is no limit in Journyx on the number of receipts that you can upload per period. Your administrator, the person at your company who administers Journyx, sets that limit. So I would talk to your Journyx administrator because there is no limit on the number of receipts that you can upload per period. But your administrator can set limits, and so it's possible that your corporate policy, there's some corporate policy where they limited you to 7 receipts per time period. However, that is configurable, and you can change that. Okay, so let's go back to our slides. So as I mentioned, the Journyx Mobile 10.1 will be released in mid-March. There is a requirement on the server side that you be running version 10.1 M1. That's a maintenance release for 10.1. And it will also be released in mid-March, so they'll be released at the same time. But you will be required to run that. The previous version, the current version available on the App Store, will remain available for anybody who's running versions of Journyx older than 10.1 M1. However, we will be making M1 available immediately with the new mobile release. And anybody who's running in our cloud environment obviously will have access to it, provided that they are on the current version, which is version 10.1. But the old version will remain available until everybody is able to upgrade to version 10.1 M1. So that's pretty much all the information I have to give you. Are there any final questions before we close things out? Okay. I don't see any further questions. We did record today's session, and we will be sending you the link to the recording so that you can refer back to anything that we discussed today. Obviously, if you would like to see a more custom demonstration of the mobile app, where that answers specific questions about your configuration, please let us know. We'd be happy to set something up. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.